Hello, good evening to you guys. How are you? Welcome to Clarity with Claire. And tonight we are talking about what is habit change coaching. It's going around a lot. There's this new thing, and my amazing school, Health Coach Institute, came up with their own health coaching method. Habit change coaching method. And I want to talk about it with you tonight just because it's totally different from health and life coaching. And there's also, I believe it's better than health and life coaching because it addresses habits. And most health and life coaching, as I'll go into later, doesn't, they do a lot of fake throughs, which is like fake breakthroughs, but there's not a lot of actual sustainable results that after, you might have a few days or weeks or months of extreme changes and lovely things, and then you go back to the same way you were being. So that's a fake through. And habit change coaching is different. And I want to talk about that with you tonight. So, it's really interesting and cool. So good to be with you all. Hi. So let's just get into this. So this whole, basically, habit change coaching is not the only thing that you would be doing. What you'd be doing if you found a masterful coach would do something called transformational coaching. So there's like this, think of transformational coaching as this giant umbrella that, commissions the 3 levels of change. So the 3 levels of change so you've got transformational coaching. The 3 levels of change are behavior, beliefs, and identity. So that's something that you should be working on with a coach. And, what you want to do is like learn how to address all 3 levels at increasingly deeper and deeper levels. And, without addressing all of these 3 levels, change won't stick. In fact, this is the secret behind habit change coaching that we'll talk about later today. But first, I just want to dive into that first level, which is behaviors. So this is the habit change part. So we call these habits. We tend to use behaviors and habits, my cats, interchangeably. So interchangeable terms, not to confuse you, but simply because in healthcare, they're used interchangeably. So why do we put so much emphasis, airplane, on habit change? Because habits are the #1 determiners of the quality of life. That's a writer-downer. Habits are the #1 determiner of the quality of life. So if you're just joining now, we're talking about habits. Hi, Stephanie and Charlotte. We're talking about habits and how habit change coaching is so different than health and life coaching. So interesting, right? So habits are the #1 determiners of the quality of life. So if you're joining this now, what is one habit that you have in your life that is serving you right now, that is determining the quality of your life in a positive way? So you can put that down into the chat if you want. Habits are the #1 determiners of your quality of life. So when you change a habit, you change the course of your life. Most people have a pretty good idea of some important changes they'd like to make in their lifestyle. Like, I'd like to exercise more. I sit down a lot. I have my businesses. But the power pull of habit keeps them stuck. Have you ever had something where you really, really want to do it? You really want to change. You know what you want, but you keep going back to those cookies, or you just don't make it stick. Hey, Shelly, talking about the power of habits. So what is something in your life that you really, really, really want to make happen, and you've tried maybe even for 30 days to get that habit to stick, but it doesn't stick, and you know that would really help you, but the power pull of habit keeps you stuck. You get pulled back into that vortex. So write that down in the chat. Please share with us. One of those things with me that I'm working on, I'm a forever work in progress, is going to bed at midnight instead of 10 o'clock. And I always tell myself I'll go to bed at 10, but then it turns into midnight. So that's something I'm working on. So as a health coach and life coach and transformation coach and habit change coach, I love making a huge difference in someone's life by helping them change their habits. And this is such, and in fact, the hottest topic today in healthcare. Doctors' #1 problem with successful outcomes, guess what? Is patient compliance. So that's a really fancy way, basically, of saying that they tell people what to do, but people don't do it, even though their health might depend on it. I mean, how many of you have done something and you know it's good for you, but you don't do it? So why? Because old habits die hard. Habits are literally wired into our brains. Neuroscience, in fact, is showing us that changing habits is not as simple as making a New Year's resolution. So functional MRI research has shown us the brain in action, and we've discovered that our strongest habits have formed neural pathways there. The neurons, I love this sentence. I'm looking at my notes actually. The neurons that fire together wire together, right? I want to build those neurons. So when, one of my clients is attempting to change a daily habit that they've performed thousands of times over 10 to 20 years, it's no wonder that they find it challenging to change. There is enormous opportunity for you to change all of these things by simply working on your habits. Yeah, so in this lesson, I want to introduce to you this approach from my amazing school. It's habit change coaching. And and go through and looking at, the big umbrella of the transformation and the 3 levels of change. So you can see where that habit change coaching fits in the big picture. So we've got those 3 levels of change we talked about. We've got behavior, beliefs, and identity. And until we get the green light in all 3 brains, which we have 3 brains actually, it's pretty crazy, and we tackle the behavior, the belief, and the identity of ourselves, we can't get those changes. And habit change is one of them. So you'll see with this behavior, we're working with habit change. With beliefs, we have belief change coaching. Identity, we've got identity change coaching. So while we're working with all 3 levels pretty much all the time when we're, with a coach, we'll go into those further later, but habit change is the first one to really work on. So habit change, though, is such a hot topic today. And if you're joining, go ahead. Hey, Ari, go ahead and type hi into the chat if you are watching and you've got a habit that you really, if we could just wave a magic wand and today you could get the result you wanted, let's say the universe is listening, type into the chat what you would like to make a habit that sticks. So yes, mine is going to bed at 10 o'clock at night, maybe 10:15. So habits are simply automated behaviors. So most of the habits with which we live our lives are efficient ways of behaving, saving us time and energy. For example, I wake up, I go to the bathroom, I brush my teeth, I wash my face. It's stuff that you do without having to think about it. It's just a routine. And basically, there's a book called The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg, and he shares that there was a researcher at Duke University a couple years ago who tried to figure out how many of our daily actions were habits. And what she found out is 40 to 45% of the decisions we make on a day-to-day basis are actually habits, not decisions. And without that, we'd go crazy. Right? If you had to concentrate on backing your car out of the driveway, every single time that you did it, or you had to concentrate on how you were driving to work every morning, you'd go nuts. So you wouldn't have time to invent fire or video games or all those things that your brain does while you're doing, your habit. So that's the magic of habits, is that because our brain stops working around that behavior, it frees up our mental activity for other things. And again, that's a quote from Charles Duhigg, The Power of Habit. So now some habits have a neutral impact on our well-being, and other habits are health promoting. And then there are those ingrained habits that are health destroying and have a severe negative impact on our level of wellness. For example, one of my coaches actually had a client, and she named Jenny, and she was a 36-year-old professional who swore that she had to have something sweet to feel like she had a meal, to feel like her meal was complete. Who's had this before, where you are, and if you have something like this where, put it into the chat of is there something in your life, something where you feel like you need this habit? If you need this ritual, it's a bad habit. Who here has a bad habit they want to get rid of, but it's so hard? And who can also, and if you can relate to basically, with Jenny's situation of feeling like, you need to have something sweet after a meal, type in sweet into the chat, because I am working on that with myself, and I've gone up and down with that adventure. So with Jenny, it didn't matter how full she was, she would automatically reach for that dessert after lunch and dinner every day. And while she claims to have gotten away with this behavior, in her 20s, in her 30s, it didn't really work. So she was getting groggy, sluggish, exhausted, gaining some weight. It just wasn't helping her anymore. It wasn't serving her. So every year she would revow at New Year's to quit this behavior, to kick her sugar habit, and that had been around for about 20 years. And every year she'd end up feeling disappointed in herself and defeated, berating herself and her lack of willpower. And and then she found her coach, which is my coach, and she kicked that habit. It's pretty fascinating. And her coach worked on habit change with her. So it wasn't just health and life coaching, but it was changing her habits, which I find fascinating and amazing, which is why I'm so passionate about this. So Jenny and my coach began their work together to shift her habits for good. And she was delighted to discover that shifting habits didn't mean that she had to deprive herself entirely. It didn't mean that she was weak. It just meant that her brain was wired for the ritual of sweets after a meal. And that she could begin to build new neural pathways that became new habits that supported her well-being instead of destroying it, right? So it's really exciting. And in the comments section below, I'm curious, tell me one habit that you consistently do that is currently self-defeating, that it could be something really small, like, I don't know, I watch YouTube videos before I go to bed, and that, the blue light wires me and then I can't sleep. I don't sleep well, So scan your day. There's likely something that isn't serving you well. And without berating yourself, you don't want to berate yourself. See if you can name that habit. So mine is going to bed at about 12 a.m. every night while still wanting to go to bed at 10. So that's what I'm working on. So I'm not the perfect enlightened human, far from that. So yeah, what is one habit that that you have that you'd like to change? Yeah, and remember, this is without blame, no beating yourself up about having this. We're just practicing awareness. Okay? And just stepping back and identifying what your self-defeating habits is just one of the first steps of the change process. So habit change is not just an event, it's a process. And we're going to continue talking about this in a second. But another thing that I find fascinating is the difference between habit change coaching and just regular health and life coaching. So what is that? And first, let's look, it's a lot. And if you were to guess, like, let's just say, when you're thinking, what am I going to learn, about, coaching? Like if I were going to learn, if I wanted to become a life coach myself, what would you imagine that you would learn, right? So if you were to guess, you would maybe say that you're imagining, first learning how to, like what would a coach do with you? Okay, a health and life coach would identify your wants and obstacles, right? And the second way is to remove those obstacles. They would help you with that. And the result is that you would have some sort of, obstacle removal tools, right? This is the basis of most coaching methods. But the coaching method I learned from my amazing school, Health Coach Institute, which I suggest you look at if you're thinking about becoming health or life coach, change coach, transformational coach. I am all of those. Check them out. So this is a good start. This is what most programs offer. However, it has some critical missing elements. And what happens, at least which my coaches found, that happens in their experience working with hundreds of, like really thousands of people at this point, that those kinds of methods create a temporary breakthrough, right? It feels good in the moment. How many of you have had an actual health and life coach or some kind of coach, and you have a real breakthrough, you think? And because it seems to have this, you seem to have this grand aha moment, but the old patterns start rushing back eventually. And then maybe after 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, it starts to come back to the old ways. I've had that so many times, and so many of my clients come to me and they've had this before with other coaches and just in their life. And that's frustrating, right? So if you've had this before in your life, share in the chat what temporary breakthroughs or fake throughs, have you had in your life where you thought, oh, I've changed this, I've kicked it for good, but then those habits came back. What was one of those for you? Hey, May. Yeah. So this is exactly what happened to one of my coaches in her practice. Instead of creating long-lasting transformation, her clients were experiencing temporary moments of breakthrough. Like, aha, oh my gosh, I get it. I'm going to change. And then they'd go away and they wouldn't follow through, which would have them feel defeated, which brought feelings of shame and kind of a screw it all mentality, right? So they'd have that moment of breakthrough where they would go out and they would, set these punishment reward systems up. They would feel that self-defeat and they would punish themselves afterwards. Or they would maybe promise themselves some reward, which would bring themselves feelings of shame. And it's like this cycle over and over, and kind of that screw it all mentality. And then they would, maybe binge or, whatever. So if you've had this before where you maybe have, who can relate to having these punishment and reward systems set up where you've sworn to go off sugar and then you have a candy bar and then you say, oh, well, I'm going to punish myself and I'm going to work out for 3 hours tomorrow, or no massage this week for me, right? I've done that so many times thinking that punishing myself would have some sort of wisdom in there. So if you've done that before, type me into the chat. I've definitely done that so many times. So over and over again, my teacher, she would watch clients come to the conclusion that effort produces failure. So why bother? How many of you have felt this before? Like, I've tried to lose weight so many times. Why bother? I'm just going to become disappointed. Effort produces failure, right? And that was unacceptable to my teacher. She knew there had to be a better way, and she was determined to find it. So she developed what you might call a magnificent obsession with any and every modality that would have an impactful gem to strengthen her coach approach. And she had massive respect for all the pioneering work that came before the habit change coaching method that she developed. So she realizes that she stands on the shoulders of bold giants who are willing to experiment, to fail and try again, and to document what works and what doesn't work. So really, really cool stuff. And once she started working this way with clients, there were no more fake breakthroughs or fake throughs, because instead, healthy habits that foster, she started to help clients produce healthy habits that foster lasting transformation. My cats. Crazy. So so what is the secret behind habit change coaching that makes it so effective? So first, let's talk about the roots or the DNA of our habit change coaching methodology that they created. They often get the question of, where does this habit change coaching method come from? And actually, habit change coaching incorporates evidence-based coaching principles such as motivational interviewing, neuro-linguistic programming, positive psychology, the science of habit change, mindful awareness practices, and many other modalities. So many different things you would hope to find from therapy and all these different kinds of people. It brings it all into one. And my coach, she synthesized years of study and research and practical application to give us a powerful structure of supporting habit change, and in a really compassionate way. So really, really cool. So what she was deepening her study. She was looking for that revelation, like, what is the missing piece, right? And there was this kind of question that kind of opened the door for her. And that question was, what if you could change someone's experience without having to remember to be different? Right? What if you could change someone's experience without them having to remember to be different? So cool. And this is exactly what I teach, and I learned from them, and also just my own intuition. It's helping you to change without having to remember to be different. Because who wants to have to, remember and, focus on changing? Just letting the change happen gradually, right? So when you're different without having to remember to be different, we're doing something similar to a neurological restructuring on an identity level. So habits are not just something you do, they actually become who you are, right? This is magic. What makes this methodology so powerful, and what you can feel, so good about when you work with like a habit change coach, is where it helps the healthy habits become part of your identity. which is, it's not like any other health and life coaching program I've ever seen. It's fascinating. So yeah, true behavior change is identity change. Who can resonate with that? If you resonate with this right now, type resonate into the chat. I find this so cool. So if you can change your behavior on the identity level, you're going to have long lasting change. If you just decide, I'm going to lose weight and I don't really have a plan, or you might get changes, but likely you're just going to go back into your changes, into your old habits. So if you want to create true long lasting change, it has to be on the identity level. And I just love this. So true behavior change is identity change. It's not about willing yourself to go to the gym every day. It's not about depriving yourself of foods that you love. It's about becoming the kind of person who chooses healthy living because it's who you are, right? If you are ready and willing to choose to become the kind of person who chooses healthy living because it's who you are, type healthy living into the chat right now. I am. So with every behavior, you are casting a vote for who you want to be. When this happens, making healthy decisions around food becomes automatic. It's not a brain hack. It doesn't occur as deprivation. Exercising doesn't feel like a chore, you trick yourself into doing. It's no longer a should or a have to, it's a get to. So if you want to become the kind of person who wakes up at 5 a.m. to go for a run, most people would agree that it's difficult to consistently force yourself out of your cozy, warm blankets into the cold. The alarm goes off and you consider the options. Am I really motivated to do this today? Yeah, but 8 times out of 10, you're going to bail on going for that run. You'll make empty promises to yourself. You'll tell yourself, I'll do that later, or on the weekend, or after work when I have more time. You'll rationalize. We rationalize that we'll make up for not following through. If you've done that before, I've done that so many times. Type, rationalize into the chat. And if you have your own story about this, please share it with us because we love when you share. This is so nice to be with all of you. I love seeing all of you guys in the chat right now. Yeah, and if you have any questions right now about all this, or if you're really resonating, type into the chat. I always go through this later. So if you are watching this later down the road and we're not live anymore, type during the chat. The more questions and the more you fill the space. I love it when you have questions and or maybe you disagree with me or you agree, just whatever. I want you to create dialogues. So on the other hand, so we talked about, you could choose to stay in bed. This is like a new habit instead of going out for that run. So, but on the other hand though, when it becomes part of your identity, when this new habit becomes part of who you are, when the alarm goes off, you are already experiencing that excitement and that inspiration to get your sneakers on and go out the door and feel that fresh air on your cheeks and feel your lungs expanding and walking up, and the gratitude that your body can do this and your body can heal, and it's easy because it's who you are. When we make that change on an identity level, follow through becomes automatic. And this is what is so magical about this kind of coaching, this transformational coaching, this habit change coaching, really. So the habits that create our best life become non-negotiables. No, not through discipline and willpower or punishment and reward loops, but because it is who we are. When we are someone who chooses healthy living, those habits just automatically become who we are, and it's easy to choose it. So in a nutshell, health is not something that you do, it's who you are. And this is radically different from most coaching methods. And yeah, and this is the ingredient, I believe, and what my coaches believe is the missing ingredient in healthcare. What we're learning to do here is work with people at the identity level to create meaningful habit change that lasts. Yeah. And when you change a habit, you change a life. The whole course of your life is on a different coordinate. And this is why I love coaching so much. So thank you so much for being here with me today. It's so amazing. Hey, Leah. Yeah, Leah, rationalize. Hey, Brian. So good to be with you guys. So I'm just going to, all these hearts. So I was going to finish, but it looks like a lot of people are joining right now. So we're talking about habit changes and how we cannot basically get the changes in our life that we want until we change the habit, but we cannot change our habit until we make it who we are and like help it on the identity level. And that is the secret to long-lasting change. And this is all about what I do with my work with clients. Leah can attest to that. She's one of my clients. She's watching. So I want to talk really briefly before we end this amazing session today with everyone. What we call the five-step transformational process. And this is how you transform. And this is how I work with my clients, but this is just like literally how a human being transforms. So yeah, I just want to review these 5 steps now. And this is the 5 steps of the transformational process. So step 1 is that we step back. So whenever you're going through something, maybe you're going through a divorce or whatever, dark night of the soul, or maybe you just want to kick a habit or you want to just live a better life, this is going to help you. So step 1 of a transformational process is to step back. It's about moving back from a situation to an observer situation. I'm sure a lot of you have meditated, but this means getting distance between you and your programming. Who can relate that they are sometimes very stuck to their programming from childhood? I am working on it so deeply, and it's so frustrating sometimes because I see myself going back into the same habits of what I learned in my childhood, and most of it was good, but there's a lot that doesn't serve me anymore. So we want to get distance between ourselves and our programming. So this programming is, what you were given at a very, very early age to make decisions about yourself and the world. And if you have something that you learned in your early programming that is no longer serving you, type programming into the chat. You can share what that is if you want, or if it's too much, you don't have to. This programming comes from our parents, our guardians, from the time that we were born and to about the ages of 2 or 3. And then it usually runs our lives for the rest of our lives if we don't get help. And that's why it seems like, we are run by our inner 5-year-old. I mean, how many of you see someone outside in the regular world, and he or she is an adult, but they are acting maybe at the level of a 5-year-old? I'd say a lot of us, maybe most of us are, because we haven't healed that programming yet. So the reason why it's important to step back and to get distance between you and your programming is that the distance opens up the opportunity to see a situation from a new perspective. Yeah? So when you can see a situation from a new perspective, you're likely to create new choices and possibilities, which is what all, I'd say master coaches do with their clients. Yeah? Oh, Leah says, best life coach ever. Yeah, Brian says, step away from the ledge. Leah says, it's so hard to step back. I know. And what is hard? I understand. I just want to hear you say it yourself. What is so hard in stepping back for you? Yeah. Okay. So answer that if you can. So step 2 of that transformational process that we must all do in order to fully transform and let go of whatever you are wanting to let go of is, step 5 is to let go. So step 1 of 5 is to let go. Step 1 was to step back. Step 2 is to let go. So at its core, transformation is a continual process of just letting go. That's it. This step is all about giving you a way to release old beliefs and to create new ones. The habit change coaching method, which we've talked about all of today, you can go back if you missed that earlier, but that's what I do. That's what I learned from my amazing school. The habit change coaching method does this specifically by rewiring your neural patterns. Okay, so step 3 of 5 is to say yes to yourself. So in the last set, we were talking about transformation as a continual process of letting go. This step is kind of about letting in. How many of you are letting in what you really want? Right? We often know what we want, or sometimes we don't even allow ourselves to know what we want. Ooh, if you are in that situation of knowing what you want, but at the same time being afraid to know exactly what you want, type in afraid in the chat. I resonate with that a lot. But this is about letting in what you want. You must let go and let in. And that is saying yes to self. How many ways can you say yes to yourself today? Whether it's taking a shower, whether it's having a green juice, whether it's saying no when you wanted to say no instead of saying yes when you wanted to say no, right? So if how are you saying yes to yourself? Put that in the chat. So this step, saying yes to yourself, is really about anchoring in new beliefs that reflect your true self now, your true healthy self now. Once we let go of those dysfunctional beliefs that are no longer serving us, we get to choose what we want to believe and who we want to be. Is that exciting? So at this stage of your evolution, we get to decide what's true about ourselves in our lives, in our world now, right? We may not have been able to do that as kids or at certain places in our lives. We do now. So in habit change coaching, this is where we get to, this is where I get to help my clients get an even deeper understanding of themselves, embodying that self-acceptance and discovering how to say yes to their truth without it feeling risky or unsafe to do so. I mean, how many of you have ever felt that it's scary or unsafe to say yes to your truth? I felt that a million times. I even feel that today. Sometimes, I felt that many times today. I'm working on it myself. Leah says, it's so hard to step back because my lizard brain, when I'm stressed, my programming keeps me stuck. Yes. And that is why I believe all of us, I think, would benefit from coaching, because we have those lizard brains, and our lizard brain is afraid of that change. So that lizard brain, when you're stressed, your programming keeps you stuck. Yeah, I so see that. I understand that. I feel that way myself. Leah says, that wasn't a complete sentence. You know what I was trying to say. Haha. Yes, very good. Brian says, it can be hard to step back when you are too vested in a particular way of thinking or a situation. Yeah. When you've got those ingrained habits and ways of thinking, that can be hard to step back. Thanks for sharing, guys. So yeah, step 4 is to take empowered action. So when you feel completely grounded in yourself and your truth, you're in a perfect place to take empowered action. Why is empowered action specifically important? If you're taking action from a place of fear, of not enoughness, doubt, confusion, worry, then you aren't coming from an empowered place. And the reason to take empowered action is not the first steps of the transformational process, is that when, a client comes to me, they're not usually in a place of empowerment at first. Therefore, it would not be effective to give them an action step, even though that's a lot of, coaching methods will teach you how to do, is to give them lots of action steps. We'll do this, do that, do that. We don't want to start from that first. So if you have ever experienced, taking an action from a place of fear, of not enoughness, of doubt, of confusion or worry, type in, I resonate with that in the chat. Type in resonate. I've done that so many times. How many of our actions during the day are coming from the place of fear? That's me sometimes a lot during some days. So step 5 is to set up accountability for yourself. This is about the transformational process of how you can transform your life. Okay, so step 5 of this important process is to set up accountability, support, and stretch for yourself. Once I help a client create an empowered action step, we'll have an amazing session and we'll transform. And there's lots of ahas and breakthroughs. Sometimes lots of ahas, sometimes it's more quiet, it depends. Then after that, we want to set up a type of accountability that makes success inevitable for that week. And we must have support and stretch so that they are supported that week. You are supported in, being held that week in between sessions, or if you don't have a coach, so that you are supported between you and yourself in creating that change. So accountability and support. So what are the conditions that you have set up for yourself for inevitable success? Right? One way is to surround yourself with people who have the belief systems and outcomes that you want to have. So if your desire is to become part of an outstanding group of people, or to experience amazing growth, then being part of a community that supports your success and stretches you into that greatness. I always like to say stretch. I'm a coach who stretches people. I am a support and stretch kind of coach. So I support you and I stretch you very lovingly. Yeah, I don't believe in coddling someone and saying, oh, it'll be all right, and not stretching them. I believe in lovingly also giving them tough love. I'm part tough love coach and part-time cheerleader, both. So someone who helps, a group of people that supports your success and stretches you into your greatness, setting you up for inevitable success. Yeah, if you have that kind of a support and stretch group, type in, I have that into the chat. If you would like to have that, say, I am dying to have that, type that into the chat. This is not just for you and me, because when you this typing all this stuff into the chat, this is for you. When you are claiming something, when you are putting this, you're putting this out into the universe. Imagine you're, Mary Poppins the movie, and the kids are tearing up. They write everything they want in a nanny specifically, and then the dad tears it up and it goes into the fireplace, and then Mary Poppins finds it. That's the universe. So by declaring all this stuff, it might seem silly, like, oh, I want this. Declare it. That is the first step. Right? So if you have that group, declare if you want it. If you don't declare, or if you do, declare that you have it, you're grateful, or maybe you have it, but you want more. There's nothing shameful with wanting more. I always want more. We're training our society to not want more. It is not shameful. Have that appetite. Okay, so beautiful, beautiful work, you guys. This is an amazing session. It was really long today. Yes, 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 yes. So beautiful, you guys. So when you surround yourself, and if you are in a place where it's hard for you to find extraordinary people, maybe you live in a small town. Some of my clients, they say, I live in a small town, and a lot of people in my town, they don't think the way I do, and I want to be with people who think like me, and they're my tribe outside of the box, so that they can support and stretch me into that community. Then I suggest going online, building a community online of like-minded people. I started, and a lot of people start with looking at mentors on YouTube, like Tony Robbins and, Marie Forleo, and, just Glennon Melton and Gabby Bernstein, just all these people, Oprah, making them part of your community as well. But yeah, this is such a great session. If you're joining this now, you can look through the whole video. We just talked about the several important steps of transformation and what I work with when you are in a session with me to help you transform, and how you can do this with yourself as well. So when you surround yourself with an extraordinary community of people who are also working on themselves, you begin to create the conditions for inevitable success that you need, so that you can have access to a wider range of experiences and choices available to you. That's my passion for coaching, is to help my clients get a wider array of experiences and choices available to them. That's kind of it. It's a lot more, but that's also kind of it. And it's, of course, to change habits and all that stuff. But yeah, so it's like developing a new normal. I love this. A new normal for how much goodness you're willing to feel all the time. Ooh, how good. I know there's like a lot of out there, it's like, oh, life can be scary, or oh, my life sucks, or what if this happens? A lot of worry. What if that happens? There's so much of that in the world. I get it. I struggle with it. But the opposite of that I like to ask my clients is, how much goodness are you willing to feel all the time? Oh crap, I guess you're doomed to an amazing life. How good are you willing to feel? Because often we're prepared for the worst, preparing for the worst to happen. What if we were doomed to an amazing life? How good are you willing to let yourself feel? That's often actually scarier than being in a mediocre state all the time. Right? Most of us live in mediocre states because it's actually a lot easier than living in that paralyzing fear and raw vulnerability of pure joy. So how good are you willing to let your life be? Right? So let's recap. We learned the 5 steps of a transformational process, which are to step back, let go, say yes to yourself, take empowered action, and to set up accountability for yourself, which includes that support and stretch. Yeah. Now these 5 steps are kind of like a scaffolding to all these techniques that, I work with my clients, that you would work with, hopefully with a really good coach, or even with yourself. I like to coach myself as well, but this is all great stuff. So before we end tonight, let me know, leave a comment, what resonated tonight with you the most in this video? What touched you about, the secret behind habit change coaching, and what interests you? How would you like to be supported and stretched this week? Do you have someone who will support and stretch you? So yeah, hey Sarah. Sarah says, is this on your personal Facebook or a business Facebook? Yes. Which is this, Sarah? Are you talking about? Here, put in the chat what you're talking about. Okay, beautiful work. Yeah, and Brian says, I relate to the small town thing. Yes. So think about how you can find someone to help support and stretch you for the week, how you can support and stretch yourself. Have a beautiful week, you guys. I will see you next week. Have fun rewatching the video if you missed some of it, and I will see you next week. And as always, feel free to ask me questions in the chat, and I'll see you soon. Bye.